our manner to build a progressive and developing country. Our desire is for a Bahamas with a competent, skillful, and productive workforce. We want a country that can feed and sustain itself. We want a country with a brilliant visionary action plan, ready to embrace a future of hope and prosperity. We encourage like minded behaviors just like you to participate with intelligence and honest contributions. After all, my friends, we have a country to build. We've got jobs and industry to create, a people to inspire and empower, and generations of born and unborn behaviors. We, the people, must protect and plan for. And if not you, then who? If not now, then when? Today on Hard Copy, recalibrate, rebuild, restore the TPM. But is there time? This is Hard Copy. We're back in just a minute.
We're celebrating tourism's finest throughout the islands of the
Don't ever
Bahamas.
check the music
17
about they
Super
finish.
Awards.
I
Help us
didn't
thank
even
the
know.
many talented and dedicated
I
behaviors
listened
on
to it,
naming
though.
them today. Straw vendors, book carriers, taxi drivers, musicians, airlines, tour
Coors, Hadji's, your everything store. Majority Rule, this is the year of celebrations, Jubilee. Commonwealth Bank, the new debit card, Rocky Farms Nursery. The PLP Empowerment Convention, the Vanya's Spices Manufacturing Limited, Cool Tech, the Air Can Do experts, Bahamian Burian Beverages, Clean Insurance for comprehensive coverage. Super Wash, open 24/7, Bank of the Bahamas, the Bank of Solutions. Super Value, the All Bahamian Supermarkets. The Show Bistro on Nassau Street. Advantage Insurance and Brokers, 61 Collins Avenue. Ron's Electric Motors, Claridge and Wolf Road. The Executive Printers Team over on Jerome Avenue. The People's Movement. And of course, the McKinney Media Group for the best results in advertisement and PR. Today on the show, you can call us at 325-023546. WhatsApp and texting 376-9234. World Wide Web, peace1075.com. Cable top box 970. TuneIn Radio, iPad, iPhone, and the Android. You'll get us there. Follow us on Facebook, Hardcopy, and on Twitter, Hardcopy Bahamas. And so now, of course, you know that lots of things are happening in the country. Politics, lots of politics. Everybody is making their move, doing what they believe is the best thing for them to do. And one such group, of course, is that of the Progressive Liberal Party. Now, a lot of people would like to say, but listen, the PLP's General Convention, this 52nd Annual General Convention, seems to be looking pretty good. And they are looking pretty good. Now, of course, the content is something that everybody has looked at and said, are these guys serious? But you see, this is what a convention is. They're trying to rally their foes, their crowd, and they are not too particular about their foes. The ones who are saying that they don't like this and they can't appreciate what is being said, never mind that, because their crowd, see that rhetoric, what they're talking down there, that you believe is nothing much, that is resonating with their folk and with their people, and they had a bunch of people in that room on the first night last night. I understand that they had the nominations today, and so we don't know yet, but we'll know in a minute when we get down there this evening for coverage, who all nominated, if Alfred says did in fact nominate, if in fact others who were not expected to nominate did so, we don't know. We're going to see, but today was an exciting day for that part of the party, and certainly the crowds that they've been getting so far have been impressive by their own records, they say. And they are pleased that they have a mix of what you call the youth and the senior citizens. And you saw a jumpy crowd. If you watched the television last night, you saw a jumpy crowd on the television, which indicates that they are off to a good start, their version of what they're doing in their convention. And certainly, when you look at the content, I know a lot of you are concerned about that content because you heard Alquitas last night talk about this that's what we do with the money kind of concept, a rhetoric kind of interactive thing that he used the crowd to look at a very sober and serious matter and just get the kind of reaction of, well, they got the stamp of approval because the crowd says that's what we did with the money, the value-added tax money. So that doesn't go down too well with people across the nation as far as what people are looking for and believing in. But that is what they said. They gave an account, is what they said. Their version of an account. That's what they did with the money. And they named a number of things like NHI, like the Defense Force boats, the vessels that you saw the government purchase. I think that there was a loan that they had gotten for that, for the Defense Force boats, $236 million, if I do recall. I know there's something on record that talks about it. But nonetheless, they said that this is a part of what they did with that $800 million, almost $1 billion thereabouts, of the monies that they had collected in value-added tax. And of course, there are many who are saying, well, the value-added tax was collected because, you know, they were supposed to be paying off the national debt and making sure that they can stay in line with that of Standards & Poor's and Moody's so that they don't get downgraded. But of course, we got downgraded. And now the record is, as far as the PLP is concerned, that they did a good job. They did spend the money. And they gave an account for what they spent. Now, of course, some people told me last night that, and these were some PLPs that, well, you know, it's not a good explanation, but at least they have an explanation. And so I suppose those who are watching from the outside and may not be a part of the PLP caucus, they may be wondering, well, what is really going on? But we'll hear more about that, I'm sure, tonight, and from other speakers that will come along and address the convention. It's a 52nd convention, and a lot of other, suppose fireworks will take place as the nights go on, tonight and tomorrow night. And I find it quite interesting that there was Shane Gibson speaking last night, along with Michael Akitas, along with Ken Dorsett, who in all seem to be very, very confident that they are going to go back in flying colors, that they are going to win without a doubt. That's how they seemed to be last night. Maybe it was just the atmosphere in the room that they were all hype about, I don't know. But they seemed pretty much certain. You couldn't tell that there were people on the outside who were not a part of the convention or part of the PLP who have any difficulties at all. You would think that, okay, we are jamming now. We are in good swing and all things are well. And we'll see. Brave Davis also touched on something very, very important last night at that convention. He made an appeal. In the final analysis, he made an appeal to so many of the young people who are losing their life by violence. And he made a very, very fatherly appeal, I thought, to them to put down those guns, settle down, love one another, that kind of a thing. And I suppose that it was quite appropriate that he made those kind of remarks at that convention, considering that he was the victim of such a crime earlier in the PLP's administration this time around. So it came off as if here's someone who knows, who was the victim but had no malice, and was basically saying, come now, let's live together, let's work together. And I thought that was a very, very good appeal by Brave Davis, the deputy leader of PLP last evening. The other thing too was that Brandy Roberts, who spoke, he was just himself as usual. He was saying that, look, these are the guys, they're scrap gang. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have no will to govern. They are all in shambles. And, he kind of really decimated the Free National Movement, official opposition, as much as he could to work them down. And they were carrying on with this narrative that has been permeating the airwaves in recent times. That narrative has been that the PLP is stable and the Free National Movement is unstable. And as long as they can work that narrative to the point where it's believed by their people, they will leave that convention. I tell you, no kidding, my observations, they will leave that convention with a kind of momentum that will propel them to do other things in campaigning. And that's what a convention is, to really rally the base. And so you can appreciate that that's what they're trying to do. Now, you may take exception with their content and the truth about the matter, or the facts about the matter, as I may want to put it. But that's up to you. As far as they're concerned, this is what they did. This is how they're doing it. And they feel as if they're looking good. So we'll touch bases with that again tonight. The broadcast starts tonight at about 8 o'clock, and we'll see exactly what's going down there on night 2 of that convention. When we come back here this evening, though, we're going to turn our attention to another group of people who are in the politics, the political arena, and they are believing that it is their time, the people's movement. And I asked the question here tonight as we began the show this evening, and I say they're talking about recalibrating, rebuilding, restoring this PTM, or this TPM, the People's Movement. But is there time for all of that? Is there time, considering that maybe there's 4 good months up to that May or June of this year that they all have before they can get ready for the general elections. We're back in just a minute on Hard Copy. We're going to have guests here this evening. They'll talk about what they think and certainly explain to us and share with us their vision for what this Bahamas that they're talking about. And it's all about trying to regroup and move the country to another level, is what they tell me. We're going to be talking with Glenn Rowe and Paul Moss and others when we come back here this evening on Hard Copy Live. Dream must be. He only plays once. He plays once a day.
Yeah, I know.
You didn't play.
I know.
Yeah, they
I'm supposed to delete this.
What that is?
I'm supposed to delete this. This is the last.
What you talking about?
The same thing we're playing.
You've got to take control of what you're putting on the head. Hi, how are you? Very good. movement, which was a party. How do I explain this? It seems so exhaustive to explain this thing. But anyway, fact is that they were part of a group just recently, and they decided that they were not going to be a part of that any longer. And a press release was issued on the weekend that I read here on the radio. And as a result of it, the people's movement is now back in swing. And this is good news for a lot of people because they themselves have been looking forward to seeing something organized take place in this country from a political point of view, where they're hoping that they can change some things in this country. They've been looking at the PLP's convention, and a lot of them are like, this can't be it. They looked at the Free National Movement Convention, and they say, this really can't be it. And then they looked at the DNA's parley that they had, and they say, wait a second, this couldn't be it. And so they themselves are now getting ready to do some things that they believe they can turn the attention of the nation to them because they have a godly mission. You know the story. It was given birth right here on this station some months ago, from around the time that they had the June 7th referendum. And when that took place, a lot of people said, you know, we need people who are going to be looking out for this welfare of this nation. We need godly people who are going to look after and talk about and base things upon the supremacy of God in the country, the Constitution of our founding fathers. And so this movement was birthed, and they went down to the hall at BCPUU, and they had several big meetings, very big meetings, to the point where everybody was like looking, and they turned their heads and they said, my goodness, this group seemed to be doing something that is resonating with the Bahamian people. And from that day on, I can tell you, because I observed it, everybody has been using this thing, people, in their presentations. It's the people's time, the people's this and all that. But it was the people's movement, the original group of the people's movement, who got some things going and fired up the imagination of a lot of Bahamians and got people moving and contributing and saying, this is what we want to do. We want to go forward with a new dispensation. And today, they are back and organized as the original group. They never broke up. It's just that they tried to form an amalgamation, a coalition, you may say, with another group, Greg Moss and those out of Grand Bahama. But there were problems in that particular group because one side was following the democratic process, and the other side was kind of perceived as dictatorial. I'll put it that way gently. And as a result of that, separation came on Sunday past. And today they're here to speak to the issue of what they have done, why they are doing what they're about to do, and the mission plan of the People's Movement. Also with me today is Dr. D. Archer and certainly Minister Charmaine Adderley, who are part of the People's Movement. That's a wonderful part of the addition because you see now a complete equality here.
That's what I'm talking about.
Women and men is a part of the People's Movement, and they're all people who are godly. That's the important thing, and they're all people who have a passion for the nation, and a passion for this country, and they're all people who are trying to do their best as young individuals to bring about a change in the country, a fundamental change, a philosophical change, a change in the kind of ideology that a lot of people have been hoping that we would do things in a particular way because we are a peculiar people.
Yes, sir.
Yet,
Yes, sir.
this royal priesthood of nations is treated any kind of how, perceived that way, treated any kind of how. And anything seems to go in the Bahamas. I was making the comment earlier that we saw the PLP and Michael Akita's State Minister of Finance talk about what they did with the value-added tax money. He was making his point. His points were based upon pure rhetoric, and you know, if you want to believe it, that's fine. But the point is, most people perceived it as just rhetoric, just good talking, but nothing with substance to the point to say, this is what we definitely did, and this adds up to what makes sense as far as governance is concerned. And so they say, you want to know what we did with the VAT money? That's what we did with the VAT money. You know, because people are asking that question. But I'm just saying that rhetoric has been one thing. This whole thing about propaganda on certain issues have been one other thing. But that is the narrative nowadays. in the Bahamas. No real accountability about anything. And not just, this is not germane to just the Progressive Liberal Party or the Free National Movement, but this seems to be the way for even those persons who wanted to get involved in a group like this. You've got to be accountable. There's no way that people are going to accept that you just tell them this and that's that. They cannot just say, well, you know, he says that he in charge, and so he says this what it is, but there was no democracy, no democratic process. It's unacceptable. And I believe that people, by and large, and all of these groups are going to make that loud and clear. They want more, they want better, and they're not just going to accept it. So having said that, we open the floor for discussion today, and also for basically an outpouring of what is happening in this group that was decided by so many people that this will be the group that people will look at, but do they have time? See, that's the question now. Time is not on anybody's side. Time is not even on the governing party side. They are the governing party, and they got to get ready. Time is not on anybody, not the F&M, not on anybody's side. Time is of the essence. So what do you do in this time period that you now have? Paul Moss, Glenn Rowe with us, and of course, Dr. D. Archer and Minister Charmaine Adderley. Let's talk. What's happening? Why? Why did it happen? Why did you all get together with a group of people, and then the next thing we know that it didn't seem like this was what's supposed to happen?
Well, you know, there was a yearning in the people's movement to do the right thing and to really have every opportunity that exists in our own eyes to allow us to have an equal footing. And we thought really that the attempted merger was a good fit because we had in Gregory Moss someone who was sitting in Parliament.
Okay.
And if that merger was possible, then it would mean that the party would have a voice and we could articulate our views in Parliament and really bring some attention to us, and therefore try to capture the hearts and the imagination of the Bahamian people. That's just human yearning and wanting to do the right thing.
You try to put together something.
We tried it. And so we did that. But in trying that, we recognized that for us, we were moving away from the core principles of the people's movement. And this is very important for us. And we recognized that when we all started, that it was not a political movement, but one where we tried to do what we call righteousness and try to bring about what we wanted, righteous governance. That's what this country wants. That's what it needs and deserves. We tried that, but we recognized that that was not happening. And ultimately, we had to make the decision to keep our core values and principles and move away in the direction that we believe now is the right path for us to be on. See, sometimes you get into your own rut and you try to make things happen for yourself, and you forget where you come from. You forget. Yeah, you can begin by looking at it and saying, well, you know, we're doing this thing. It's now a political movement because you did have a vote where the people themselves, the people of the people's movement, I was there. That is correct.
Voted overwhelmingly.
That's right.
Almost 100%. That's right. Almost 100% that they wanted a political arm of this movement, because you're right, the movement did have different components, a socioeconomic and a spiritual arm, and then it had the political arm.
Yes.
And so the people voted for it, so they wanted it, but it wasn't going the way that the people wanted it to go. And the steering committee that was elected eventually, were the movers and shakers of the people who you stood in the gap for those people. So you were representing what they wanted.
That is true. And when we had our own time, we would sit and say, listen, this is not really what we signed on for, because we are representative of the people. And the people know that they want their voices heard. They want to be a participant in governance of this country. And no longer do the people want people who would dictate to them, telling them what must happen because this is how it is.
Now listen, I'm going to be straight with you. I understand that there was a lot of dictation happening inside the group. I understand that there were a lot of views that were expressed that were not democratic, and that nobody had any process in. And as a result of that, you all couldn't take it. Is that the case? Because I happen to know Greg Moss very well. And most people know Greg Moss, and they know that Greg Moss wants to go and do things because he believes that he knows how it's done, and he does know how it's done as far as parliamentary procedures and all that's concerned, but there's no monopoly on having this knowledge about what's supposed to be done. And I suppose if the process was ignored, then I can see what you're saying. Are you saying to me that the process of democracy was ignored in the amalgamation of the two groups, and so it just couldn't breathe, just couldn't
Yeah,
live?
we had some real serious challenges in how the democracy was being played out.
I see.
And the views of Mr. Moss and maybe one or two other members was just not sitting well with us in terms of how democracy is supposed to play out. And so when we found out that in some commentary that voting was a failure and that they were not interested in the secret ballot, the ballot that we know is very important for
Of course.
our country, because we know that this country, one could only imagine if, for example, you have the BLP convention, there's voting tomorrow, if they were all required to vote in the open for the leader.
Yeah.
Imagine how that would be.
Yeah.
And that was a tenet that we really,
So the secret ballot is very, very important.
absolutely, is very important. It's very important. I think that for a country, and this country, because we're small and because we have relatives, the secret ballot really plays a vital role in ensuring that relations continue. In other words, there are 5 or 6 of us in this room right now. But if we take a secret ballot, no one would really know, you know.
No, I see your point,
how
and you're
someone
right.
has voted.
You're
But
not incorrect.
imagine, because of all the family relations in this country, the small country, that people would know directly, well, my brother did not even vote for me.
Right.
I mean, that causes real problems. And so we felt that that was serious enough for us to really start to consider whether or not we made the right move in attempting this union. And see, we did it with the right heart. We really wanted to move this country, move the party, and try to get us have a go at it. But ultimately, we moved ourselves in that process.
There are some people who are even today are trying to spin a narrative. There was never a counter press release. I didn't get one. If there was one, there was never a counter press release to what was said and claimed in the People's Movement press release. But there are still some who've been spinning a narrative, and you hear them here and there in pockets across the dial of talk radio, trying to say that this is all about egos, and that because of egos, people wanted to be in charge of something that they would have, just disintegrated, that kind of a thing. I want to ask you that. I've got to ask you that pointedly. That's my job. I have to ask you pointedly. Was this about egos, Glenn Rule, one of the founding members of the People's Movement original group? What do you make of that, and what do you make of people trying to spin that narrative to say that this is one of the reasons why it can't fly, or nothing will happen in this country because people are too big on egos and not on substances?
Steve, well, thank you so much for having us. One of the things that even came up in the conversation, and I reminded Greg of this, that every single member of the steering committee voted for him to come in. And I think that was an important statement. I think that was a statement of good faith. It said to him that the people movement seek to be inclusive, provided there are certain common values and things of that nature. Furthermore, I'm not even sure that's the proper question to ask me if there were egos, because even in my situation, I withdrew from a process to allow the process to advance. So that was not, in my mind, a question of ego. That's a question of what's in the national interest.
Absolutely.
Because the movement, as you rightfully indicated, was born from a certain genesis, not just in terms of the referendum, but one of even the recordings that you play so often. Dr. Miles Monroe speak of this nation in a certain way. And I think those prophetic words, the referendum, the sense of where the people are, that this generation really is not looking for a certain kind of leadership that is reflective of yesterday. And I think, and I don't believe the question is disrespect to Mr. Morse or whoever, but I think even to where we realize is that these groupings were not of the same kind. There were fundamental direction in which we need.
Yeah, you had philosophical differences, even in ideology. Because one would want to believe that all of us as Bahamians believe in the tenets of democracy. I mean, that's almost a given.
And not only that, Steve, but in terms of, we believe that the people's movement was born or birthed as a result of ensuring that ordinary people have a voice and a say in terms of the direction in which their government goes. This is not only true in the Bahamas. All around the world, people are rallying up and say, we want to say in our government. That's one of the reasons why we are equally involved and we march or support what they're doing, because people are realizing that governments, for whatever reason, find themselves in a back door making decisions, and those decisions are not affecting ordinary lives of the Bahamian people.
Nor are they inclusive.
Nor are they inclusive. So fundamentally, even before we engage, those were some of the tenets that were important to us, and that is one of the reasons, Steve, we even talk about convention at a particular time frame, so that it allows that even if there were issues that were to come, that the convention would be the basis by which these things are settled and resolved. But it never got to that point. As you know today, Mr. Moss has since relaunched the United Democratic Party.
So he's reverted to the United Democratic Party.
Based on the images that I saw on Facebook. So the TPM, like you rightfully said, had to, and we were frank in our meeting about 2 weeks ago, where we say we have to come and check ourselves in terms of what this movement is about, what is our origin, and how best we can advance the movement in that regard. And I can say this to you, that people, whether it be within the groupings or people who you meet on an ordinary basis, they wanted to know what was happening to the TPM. They were not hearing anything from us in that regard. It was almost like the movement was no longer moving in that regard. And part of that is because the people wanted to be involved in the process, and they felt that they were not being a part of it.
Well, you cannot blame a people whose time has come, because I can speak to the matter. I know what had happened. I know how the people were called together, because I was used at that point as a vehicle. The people said to me, look, you need to go and get some fellas, and you all need to find a way to get this thing going. And I did that. And we did it from a common ground of this is a common cause. And what came out of it was all these different components of the spiritual arm, socioeconomic arm, and all those things, and certainly the political arm, which was done democratically. I want to say that because I was involved, and I think I should say that right there.
Yes, sir.
And that was done by a vote to the people, a plea to the people. If this is what you want, here's your secret ballot. I mean, it's amazing. As I think of it now, but wait a second. As I think of it now, that's a serious God moment right there, because that night when the actual thing happened, there was a rally of all the people in that room, and we were there to make the presentation, in case people have forgotten, with Prescott Smith, who was in fact talking about the natural resources. And in the midst of that particular unfolding of that event, I was the one who was, as the member of the MC, did the vote in the room. And so that was happening simultaneously as people cast their ballots in a secret way. And then all the votes were counted afterward, not at that same meeting. It's amazing. See, I set up for a point of view of process, because that actually happened. That's how it happened. And so everything was a total legitimate thing. The people voted, they came, they heard the presentation that night by my brother, Prescott Smith, and at the same time simultaneously voted for if they wanted a political arm. And the questions were simple. Do you want a political arm to be included as part of the people's movement? And the people voted, yes, we want a political arm.
And when we counted it, I think there was one no.
There was one no at the count. But that is something.
If I can just say this, Steve, but they were not just asking for a political party. They were saying, we want people who can represent our values.
That's right.
We want people who can understand what this movement is about, who can appreciate that nation building does not consist of just politics. And nation building consists of persons who have interest on the social component. Nation building consists of the churches and the role. And so all of these dynamics are at play. It speaks to, in my mind, what Dr. Miles envisioned, a nation that can really model out what nation building is about. And so we had people within the grouping who are not necessarily interested in politics, but say, I want to be, I saw some of these persons around the table.
Exactly. I didn't get involved really based on the political side, more of the social aspect. And I think that is one of the core things that made the TPM different. It was an organization that was diverse. It had different arms, and the political arm was an aspect of it rather than the all in all of it. And I think that's where we were seeing as well that there was a problem in the way that we were going.
Understood.
When the politics becomes more than everything else. We're not just here to get people in government, but also to make changes in our communities and in our environment to uplift the people around us. And if we're not going to focus on those things, then we're not doing the people's mandate.
So we see, and that was Dr. D. Archer, we see that something went afoul early in the game in this new gathering of people movement and the United Democratic Party, which is where Greg came from. It's a humming, which is where Greg came from, and it just didn't mesh. It did not work out, and it didn't work out for many reasons. And one of the main things was that it wasn't perceived that there was enough democracy within the organization, and people wanted to just lay down the rules and say this is how it's going to go. And maybe the thing that actually happened there was that because Mr. Moss was over in the Parliament, that may have been a big attraction for you all, thinking that that could be a way of laying the groundwork to establish.
It was initially an attraction for us, but I think that the lessons, because whatever we go through, Steve, there has to be some valuable lessons that are learned from it. And I think that for us, that experience tell us this cannot be what we want moving forward in terms of parliamentarians and other stuff, and not in a negative way, but simply based on the fact that people are looking for leaders who would serve. People are looking for a new kind of leadership that says, what are your concerns? How can they be addressed? What are your ideas? How can we include your ideas as a part of the process so that you have what used to be the way we consider governance by the people, of the people, and for the people, on behalf of the people. And this encapsulates, I believe, what the foundation of the movement was about. People have to get involved in the process. I heard, I think it was yesterday, a quote by former Cylinder, that the people are our greatest resource. And that's why I believe you had at those halls this flood of people coming from every direction who feel now that they have something that they can call their own and participate and be a part.
Do you all feel as if this is where you have now returned to a place where it's comfortable, where people are expecting things to happen, and that you're back on the road, so to speak? You're back to what you're supposed to be doing. Do you feel that way? I want to find out from Paul and everybody in the room. Do you feel that way, or is it that you are overwhelmed by the disappointment of this failed attempt to, hold hands with somebody else and it didn't work? Where are you on it? Because, well, when people look at the fact that you had a movement, that in the original movement, and then you went and did something else, and you're coming back to it, what's the kind of feedback and response? Do you feel as if you're back on common ground and familiar territory, that kind of thing?
Well, we are very excited. We believe that this is a new moment, a new beginning for us. And I recall as a boy reading, I think it was the Tribune of either 69 or 70, can't be sure which, but it was a moment in which Cecil Wallace Whitfield resigned. I think he resigned in a speech. He said that my soul is dancing.
Yeah, I'm free at last.
Free at last. And that is what I certainly felt, because in being in this attempted merger, one really gave it his all. I gave it my all to try to make sure that it could work, to support as best I can, and to ensure that the core values of what we stood for remained intact. And it was a labor, really, quite frankly, to continue on in that vein, knowing that I'm attempting to do something that is not right, isn't feeling right. And so when the decision was made collectively that we go back, my soul was dancing.
I see your point.
Yeah, we are free. We know that God permitted these things to happen. And from that, we've learned valuable lessons. The lessons that I take away from this is that if you want a king, God will give you a king.
Mhm.
But he serves as your king.
Yeah.
Because he is saying to you, I bought that referendum, that victory. It wasn't you or anybody else.
Mhm.
Because if you'll recall, we were all outnumbered. We were outnumbered,
Everybody.
outspent.
Mhm.
We could not really get our say. We had all of the influential people in this country, all the aristocratic people, the people who are successful in life,
Telling you, no
telling
way.
us, no, you should vote
You
yes.
should vote yes.
And God stood up. He had the victory. And he's saying to us, I gave you that victory. Somehow you got confused and believed it was mine.
Mhm.
And you decided to try to say, we want a leader too. We want a leader in parliament too. And that's what we got. And then we discovered, in the hard way that that is not what was best for us. But the lessons learned is that you cannot go in that direction. That you must lean not onto your own understanding, but lean on
Yeah.
the principles of God. And so we've learned that lesson. We know that we're not going to do it anymore. And we know that little is much with God. And then we believe this, that there had to have been a sifting.
Yes.
We had to separate.
Mhm.
I mean, you cannot have wheat and tares together. We had to move forward and move in this direction because we understand now what our purpose and mission is about.
That's
It's
good.
crystallized right now.
Yes, sir.
That we must just be faithful, we must be obedient and move forward. We put on blinders like those sorry horses and we just focus, not concerned with what is going on to the left or the right, PLBF, them, whoever else. We're not concerned about that. We're going to go ahead and march on. And we believe that we will have the same kind of success as what took place on June 7th. It was a miracle then, and we believe in a miracle now.
Yes.
Well, that's quite interesting because a miracle is what is really needed when you look at what's unfolding in our country politically. You've got the PLP way up front with the idea of they are more stable than anybody else, and that is good enough for the people to vote for them, is their opinion. Stability is what is supposed to be reigning supreme now because everybody else seems to be in shambles. And I'm happy to hear you say that if you're focused on what you believe that you should be focused on, you may have some measure of success. I want to bring in Minister Charmaine Adderley, who's also been moving in a dynamic way with this particular group. And maybe Minister Charmaine Adderley can give us an insight as to what did she see with the amalgamation? What does she now see if there's been a separation? And what does it mean in the body of the people's movement, those persons who gathered and put their monies where their mouths were and say, let's go and make something else happen?
Wow. Thank God for Jesus today, I tell you that. I got to call his name because I'm humbled, Steve, to be here. I've been one sitting on the other side of the radio for so long. And as much as you all called about coming in and coming to light, I was just quite fine to continue working in the background.
Yeah.
But I really honor the Lord and I thank the Lord for you all making the call to call those of us who, even today, there's some persons who are listening, and I think as a people, we have really taken a lot in our nation. We have had a lot of challenges. We've had a lot of difficulties. And my whole intention for coming forward with the people's movement, like those, even a lot of persons who gathered in that hall. I was one of the people in the audience, just observing from the background and just, encouraging you all to go forward, excited about what I saw, inspired by just the heart of the leaders I saw coming forth and just the whole movement of itself. They called me out of the shadows. So it was heard. There are a lot of people who are hearing, and we know it has not been an easy road for the Bahamian people. But there are a lot of us who have to be called out of the shadows because we have put a lot of confidence in our leaders to handle our business for us. And honestly, before the Lord, we can't continue that road anymore. It's not going to work for this nation. And so my whole press and coming, even when Pastor Glenn called me to say, we need you to do this, I was like, but I can still work, we can still do this. But when the Lord calls you, I think it's time to answer the call. Yes. And in obedience, I answered. And for me, I was just always amazed just by what this movement is about. I've seen a difference. Again, not it just being a political party, but it being about a movement. And so these gentlemen called us forth and we were able to start to move. I think that just coming in, the decision was being made to have the merger. And you want to try to, give things that, it's not to pull any but you know, it really just never set right for me. I just can honestly say that. But again, we want to. This is what democracy truly is all about. And again, when we realized that we were what inspired me to this can't be it.
Yeah.
We
You got into a group that you say,
what's going on?
is the
Where's the fire? What caused me a couple? I was fine. I've been listening of your show for years, and then when What's Up came along, I was shouting, you know, and so I was just excited always to listen. And I felt God called me to say, get involved, you know. And there are a lot of people who really are doers, you know, the kind of help they need to do it.
Yeah, we need to put all the connections about it.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot to be said, also, because really the truth is this group, they are upfront. They are upfront and honest. Sensitive out on the whole thing in media, and everybody doing their own thing for quality is a tenet of democracy, and if there's no accountability on that, because one can be more than just checking the chat room, talking things, and then anybody can say anything. Money with the amount of people to live radio, and let is on the brink of that we know where we are. We have this value added tax thing that people are making a lot of noise about now. But on the principles, Paul Marsh, you would know this from the financial services sector, being blacklisted again. A lot of things are actually happening to us right in our faces, and we don't seem to have a clue what's going on. Because we're believing all the rhetoric,
everything will be okay,
and all the smoke and mirrors, and all the sweet talk, and all the propaganda, and it seems like our people are lost in space right now. And so I encourage you to call us and talk to us about it today, because the People's Movement, they are here. They want to share what it is that they see, and I want to ask them some pertinent questions today as to how you are going to get this thing going to the point where there is change in the country, when in fact time is of the essence. We got to discuss that today, but let me first take a call. Hardcopy, how are you?
Hi, good evening, Stephen. Good evening to you guys.
Peace and
Good
love.
evening. How is it?
He's a good gentleman who spoke to him. He was so pathetic. You don't even know how pathetic he was.
A good gentleman, that must have been Glenn
Or Paul.
or Paul.
Very pathetic. Listen, Steve, remember when the movement, when you started the movement, right? Come on the radio and I called. First of all, let me let you know. In God's eyesight, you and Mr. Bostwick are out of place. This is a God movement, Steve. This is a God movement, Steve. You and Mr. Bostwick need to get back in line, because your name is being mentioned and you all are out of place.
Understood.
But moving on. It was also said that the People's Movement will not get anywhere when they amalgamate with the gentleman from Freeport. That's not a part of God's plan.
Yeah, you told me that. You was the one who said that.
New leaders. He is not new.
That's raw. You
This is exactly what this gentleman told me. I remember your call now. You told me that.
If you don't listen, they learn their lesson from that.
Yes, sir. We repent.
But I must say to you, Steve, you're my brother, you allow me some time in your office, you and Mr. Bosford are out of place. That's all I have to say for now.
Please, if we get your contact, that'll be good, sir.
Steve, answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have his contact.
Yeah.
I appreciate your call, and I hear what you're saying. But you know, there are many mysteries that are happening, and this is one of those mysteries. You don't know what's going to happen and what's going to surface, because anybody told me a couple of weeks ago that there was going to be an amalgamation, I would have laughed at that, and then it happened. And then if anybody told me there was going to be a separation, I would have laughed at that, and then it happened. So if anybody tells me now that I'm out of place with somebody else, I say, hey, You know, you never know what can
You,
happen.
you never know,
There's a-
and John is out there leading thousands of others in another
On-
path
on the
based on the
Weavon.
same common
There's
cause.
some people who just
Yeah.
can't help it.
Yeah.
I'm one of those individuals like John who can't help it. We're gonna be there somewhere doing something to marshal people and to make sure that people's voices are heard. That's what I do.
But one of the things you said, Steve, is a question of trust. And one of the other things that I think we learned also from the merger is that this whole question of how party politics work, you know, where people feel that to question the leader is rude and out of place. And I'm not talking in a public way.
Yeah.
I'm talking more in an environment. Leaders supposed to create the environment of accountability.
That's right.
You see, and that is why I believe one of the other fundamental things in terms of the movement is that the movement is really looking for servant leadership, not necessarily kings and that kind of way, but people who understand that I have to make myself accountable. Whether I believe what the person is saying is right or wrong, I have to submit myself to that process. And when people feel that they shouldn't and ought not to submit themselves to that process, then I'm simply saying that they want to bring over an old model of leadership that will have no place in this dispensation.
This is a new dispensation.
This is a new dispensation.
I mean, Miles Monroe said it to us. He said, you know, in that prophecy, he talked about we will see people we've never seen before. That's what that gentleman was talking about just now. You'll see people you've never seen before, and they will be people with the Spirit of God, and they will move in a force that will, you know, usher in a new Bahamas.
A new
what
Bahamas,
he said.
based on a new mindset.
Based on a new mindset, and they will take us into the next Bahamas. He says the time for it is now. It has been birthed. Now, when that was said, a lot of people got like, okay, what does that really mean? But playing it on the radio so many times over and over and over, I think over time, people have been able to dissect that and to analyze it and to find out exactly what it means. A lot of what had been happening at the time, too, was the philosophy of Dr. Miles Monroe in where he saw this nation. And his prophetic words were so spot on that it spurred on a whole generation of new people. That's what is happening, you know. And they cannot believe that, and he said they will not wear the old armor anymore. That's what you just said just now.
Yeah.
When you saw the fact that they're bringing old things from old political parties into something new. It's like putting old wine into new wineskin, that kind of thing. What has happened is that, or new wine into old wineskin. What has happened is that they're bringing something that used to be, and he said it this way, Maslow, he says, you know, the weapons that kept us. See, when people hear weapons, they get thrown off. They say weapons that kept us. The safeguards, the things that kept us, the things that kept us and made us comfortable can no longer keep us. That's what he was saying. We need a new dispensation.
And part of that, as a leader, is to make yourself accountable to the people.
No question about
Part of that is to say to the people, we submit to this process, even though you may not very well know the outcome. And so when those type of things were not playing out, this is a result of it. And so I think this would have been a natural process. Obviously, there was some in the room who saw this way down the road and other stuff like that. But I think it played out, even as the gentleman said earlier.
We're talking today with Pastor Glenn Rowe, and of course, he too is very much a part of the People's Movement. Dr. D. Archer and Minister Charmaine Adderley. Paul Moss is here with us today. It is a day of review and a day of kind of like cleansing in a way, because here it is, this group of people are now the ones who are back to the focus, doing what they were supposed to in the first place be obedient to. And that is what is important there. Obedience is a very serious thing. If you don't do what you're supposed to do and you have not been obedient to do it when you know that you've been given the compulsion to do it, and you go contrary, like going to find your own king, you will get in trouble. It could cause embarrassment, and it could cause you to miss the whole mark. I believe this time, I was talking to my wife last night, and she was like, she watched the convention and all that, and then we were covering and all that, and it was just like, you know, she saw those people and all that, and she saw all that was being said and all of the stuff about, you know, this accountability, so-called accountability through rhetoric. And her whole thing was that, you know, boy, you know, it's amazing what is happening here, because it looked as if everything is just do what you feel like. and just believe what you want to. And there's no real accountability, is what she was saying to me. A lot of people feel that way. It cannot be a situation anymore where we just accept and we don't ask questions and we just follow along. I think that's what is happening here.
Yeah.
There are people who want to ask questions, say, wait a second, I got a question. It may sound silly, but I got a question. And I think that's what is happening. A lot of leaders presently, right now today, have missed that. They've missed that because they are simply not a part of the new way of thinking. It's an old weapon. The old weapon say, hey, leave that alone. Status quo, look at. Don't rock the boat because this will be this would wait for us all these years. Leave that right there. And people are now coming along like Dr. D. Archer saying, but wait, I thought, can I say something? And that is what is happening in the body politic of the nation. And I don't believe that our leaders actually recognize that. Not yet. But they will soon recognize that because that is what it is.
They are basically the status quo. And so they don't want to changes that are necessary. And people recognize that, if I stay quiet and if I remain outside the process, then we get junk bond status. In other words, you hold back yourself. You're not prepared to participate. You're not prepared to put yourself forward. And then you allow persons who are responsible by virtue of the authority that we have given them through Parliament to make the kinds of decisions that put us all under the floor. Because when you look at it, they said that the VAT money went here, but we also know that the VAT money went on a party carnival. And no one is talking about that. And so when you sit quiet, they get to do their carnival. They get to do those things. Yes. And when you sit quiet, you have the threats of blacklisting again. And we sit down with our hands folded and praying and say, oh, let's hope nothing happens. We are reactionary and not proactive sufficiently to go out there and head some of these things off and, really be able to stand on the seashore and see what is coming and be ahead of the curve. Yeah.
I think you said it best, Steve, this whole following mentality of, if you have a leader, you just follow him wherever, as someone said, follow me as I follow Christ. Well, we have a lot of young, educated people in our organization, and that's just not going to cut it.
Absolutely.
We're going to ask questions. We're going to research for ourselves. We have ideas of our own. We have things to bring to the table. And that's just not the form of leadership that we're going to allow anymore. Because like Paul said, we've seen where this has gotten us. We continue to follow threads and blind leadership. Yeah. And we can see that we're falling, and we're all just saying, well, the leaders say so we're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a change.
Quite interesting. Talking about that, the fact that people, or young people, want to break out and say, hey, I got something to say. Hear me now. I have a text here that somebody sent me, right? Just now. Because of what is actually happening. This person says it this way, and you will be able to glean exactly your point and Paul's point. This is what this person says. Hi there. Christie said that they created 32,000 jobs. This person says, created is the wrong word. 32,000 became available through debts, resignations, and retirements. About 5,000 times 5 years, 25,000. The 52 weeks, another 1,500. Bahama, another 6,000. So the closest to creating jobs was that of Bahama. And this person says, see, I can think for myself. I can figure this out. You can't fool me with that, is what this person is really saying in a nutshell. He says, if I do my quick calculations, you probably got, in 5 years, you probably got 25,000 jobs, right? That's what it would amount to if people retired and you were doing timely retirements and that kind of thing. Exactly. And it's not been happening. Because we know there are a lot of bottleneckers who are still, people have retired or reached the retirement age, have been brought back and stay in the system.
That's right.
And we could name names of people who are examples of that. But that's not even, we don't have to do that. And so this person is saying, see, I can think for myself. And that is what young people are saying, because this is an information age. It's that simple. An information age means that I know some things I want to say. I want to let you know that I understand what is going on in this country. And that is what the average young, professional, educated Bahamian is saying. There are other others who are also young, perhaps in an uneducated way, and one where they're not edified by anything much or even inspired by anything spiritual, they would follow blindly to whatever the drum major says, okay, we can go this way, and we say, move it to the left, and we all move to the left. You say, okay, we can go this way, and we can move it to the right, and we all move to the right. And you see, the point what I'm making is that they are following the drum major, they're following the leader of whatever it is that they want to be into. And so there are people who are concerned about that as we talk about the people's movement today. And so I'm going to run to a break here. There's much more. Oh, I have telephone calls. There's much more to talk about it today because I want to really get into it. I'm saving this. I want Glenn and Paul and others to think of it, about what it is that they're now saying, and what is it they're now doing. And the people need to know that definitively from them tonight because this is their opportunity to say so. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Hardcopy, how are you?
Hi, Steve. How you doing, my brother? Good
Listen,
afternoon to
how
everyone in the
you
studio.
doing?
Right here, man, Steve. It's really amazing what's going on in the public domain. All day I listen to the talk shows, listening to the different commentaries and the suggestions of like-minded persons in the community. It's really amazing that I listened to the convention last night, and Steve, two things popped out at me. First and foremost, I was not impressed by the messages that was coming out of that convention, despite, the highlights of everyone tend to speak about how nicely the room was, the sound, the light, the video, and all that stuff. Move that glitz on the side and let's look at the content, the message content coming out of there. Basically, all day I've heard persons calling in saying that all they heard was a bunch of lies, and the host of each show was trying to remain what you would call politically correct, and asking their callers not to use the word lies for the sake of being sued. But you got to call it for what it is.
That's foolishness. They are inexperienced talk show hosts. What do you mean?
This is what I'm saying.
People give expression to what they thought the whole matter was.
That I really came up with today is either deception or deliberate inaccuracies. Here it is. You got people up there telling you, first and foremost, what bothers a lot of Bahamians? The mere fact that people will go around speaking the untruth that Bahamians don't like to pay taxes. Let me say this much. A Bahamian would not mind paying taxes if they have fair accountability and transparency to where their tax monies are going. And this is where the problem comes in. Here it is. We have the narrative that, for instance, one thing, the VAT was created according to the government. The VAT was introduced to help to pay down the national debt.
Yes, that was it. That was said on the floor of the House of Assembly.
Exactly. Then they spin it around and said, how Mr. Alquidas, and I'll call his name by because he really disappointed me, even though I know he has a job to do, but he disappointed me. How could you allow anyone to allow yourself, your integrity to be questioned? When you could come on the floor and then say, the money, the VAT wasn't introduced for that, not for the national debt. It goes into a consolidated fund that helps to take care of the day-to-day expenses of running a government. That is foolishness. First and foremost, the government has been deceptive. This PLP government has been deceptive to the Bahamian people upon the premise that the VAT was introduced to pay down the national debt. That right now, it's all about. Then, to add insult to injury, you have an increase of the debt now, where you haven't even the $800 million that you claim you collected. My question to the government is, how much of that money has been diverted to help pay down the debt? Today, there's no answer. Then secondly, you're going to come back and say that the debt now has been increased by how much? $200-300 million. So if you borrowed all this money, you collected all of this money, then the Bahamian people have the right to ask, where is the VAT money?
Yes, that's correct.
You have Mr. Alquidas on the stage, and I'll end with this, Steve, trying to give answers to where the VAT money went. When, originally, if you look at it, the money was never intended to go into those things. It was supposed to be directed to pay the national debt. We have a problem with this government. If our Bahamian people don't see what's going on in front of them with the blinders on or off, trust me, in another year or so, when this another downgrade comes, we would be in a deeper ditch than where we are right now. And I pray God that He changes the pathway, remove this incompetent in government, and let's put a group of people that it has to meet, that is independent or not, put them in place.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you very much for your call. Yeah, a lot of people are concerned about it because there's a thin line between when you talk about accountability and just kind of ease over rhetoric and propaganda. Basically, that's the correct word on this particular one, because the truth be told, there has to be proper accounting and transparency, especially from the Minister of State. He is just not a cheerleader. He is just not a member of a party. He is the substantive Minister of State for finance in the country, and his reportage has to be much more succinct and better than that. It cannot just be a frivolous approach to this is what happened, and then use the crowd in a way that this was fantastic. This was good theater. Let me just tell you, I am a very fair man. Michael Akitas was at his most fearsome best last night in his presentation, because I always knew him to be very shy and not so confident. He was absolutely confident and absolutely fantastic when it came to spinning the rhetoric and getting the people to interact with what he was saying, and to have the people say, if you look at it legally, Paul is a lawyer, the people were saying, that's where it gone.
Yeah, they were making that
See, that's where the money gone. The people were saying that. He was bringing them to the brink of saying, we spend this, we spend that. We bought the ambulance. We did the new clinic. We did all the craft for the Defense Force, $236 million. All of these things. He talked about the University of the Bahamas, all these things. Of course, some money had to be spent for that. And maybe he's correct that they did make contributions to that. But if one was to go succinctly and look at the actual numbers of what was spent, the allocations of them, and add them all up, you just don't get rid of $800 million any kind of how. $800 million, that's money that will blow all of our minds. And I'm saying that people are now perceiving that $800 million has been blown by the government. Now, they may have only spent probably maybe $200 million on everything all over. But the point is, when one casts this aspersion that, we have spent all of this money, the number being $800, on other things that we didn't plan to spend it for, and that's how we can account for it, people will reject that. I mean, they should know that. People will just reject that.
Well, see, if that was just a convention, it's not really a report.
Yeah.
And certainly not the kind of report one would expect from the Minister of State for Finance.
Yeah.
You couldn't take that report into any boardroom. That's not acceptable.
No.
You have to show figures. You have to show actual figures as to what, and receipts as to what took place, and that's what as well.
Yeah, well, you're not going to see that in a convention setting, and that's why it was dealt with there, because you can get the people to bring the crowd, and it's overdone with. As far as a lot of fans and listeners and supporters concerned, they've already reported. That's where the money gone. They understand that. That's a psychological thing that has taken place.
I get that.
And he has given them the match in order, so when they go into these communities, they'll be able to defend where the money goes.
They actually said social media. It was done at social media. He said he actually said when they get on social media asking where the money gone, you say that's where the money goes. So it's a nice style. It's all rhetoric. But anyway.
But a lot of us aren't blind, Steve, and we all know that they expanded the budget, and the deficit actually increased, and they actually spent more money and borrowed more money, and so our debt went up. I mean, that is clear. And so any thinking Bahamian can see that process, that they did not do what they were supposed to do, and they actually increased the debt, and we all have to pay that off. And so that's a problem, because we took on VAT in order to pay off our debt and got more debt. I mean, where's it going to stop?
Yes, quite interesting. I want to go to break, right? Let's go pay the bill, or several of them, and come back and talk this evening on Hard Copy. We've got Glenn Rowe with us, Paul Moss with us also, Dr. D. Archer's with us, and so is Minister Charmaine Adderley. We're all here. They're part of the People's Movement. There are a whole lot of people out there who are loving the fact that the People's Movement is back to its original state and back on its game plan. And let's see if they can move forward and get a job done. But, time is of the essence. When we come back here, we will talk about that because, really, there are some who already said, boy, I don't know if anything can happen anymore this year. It looks as if time then gone. Maybe time ain't then gone. We'll see. We're back in a minute. This is Hardcopy.
This is the only election where this would even be possible.
Yeah.
Because PLT is so far away from.
Paul said it, people looking for miracles. The miracle is happening. Thursday, Hard Copy Live, and we're being heard around the entire world on TuneIn Radio, Atlanta, Chicago, Washington, New York, all across Miami, here in the Caribbean, and certainly around the Bahamas as we talk with the People's Movement, Glenn Rowe, Paul Moss, Dr. D. Archer, and of course, Minister Charmaine Adderley. They're all a part of this TPM. That's what it's called, the TPM, and that's something that's been resonating with a lot of people in Grand Bahama, as well as in Abaco, as well as around the Bahamas, and certainly down in Andros. I know that you've got the Bethel young man in Andros, who in fact has been a part of the TPM, and from its original inception, and we'll see exactly how the whole thing unfolds. But we're wondering if they have enough time, and we're going to have to get it at this time, in this final half hour today, if they have enough time. We're going to ask that question. Let me first go to the calls and say good evening. How are you? Hard Copy.
Good afternoon, Mr. McKinney. Good afternoon to your guest.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
And glad to see that the People's Movement is back in order and is going because, like I said, every time I call people looking forward to you guys, lead the way. We need a change. There has to be a change so we can move this country forward. Also, Ms. McKinney, and as it relates to Mr. Alcides, I think that, like you said, it was a good production, but it's funny. When VAT was first introduced, any behemoth that keeps record, this was supposed to be the pay down the national debt. Number one priority is the pay down our national debt. Period.
Because we were in trouble with all of these rating agencies, and we did not want to fall off the cliff by not being responsible with what we're supposed to be doing with reeling in spending and amassing all this money to get things paid and to make sure that we're in a good place. So that's a part of what was supposed to be happening. Absolutely.
Remember, they were supposed to do it at 15%, but it down. They changed their mind to 7.5%, and this is on the direction of the international people, so we can have money to pay down our national debt. Now you're telling me you put in the consolidated fund, and then you go on from the consolidated fund to start spending this money on all kind of stuff, and still didn't get around to the point to say how much money adds up to date. You guys actually pay down the national debt. Another thing, Mr. McKinney, as related to the Prime Minister and 32,000 jobs, we had a conversation at work in the office. I think, you have to think about it for a minute. He just left it out there. Boy, he created 32,000 jobs. He didn't say what kind of jobs. He didn't say these are permanent jobs. These are temporary jobs. What kind of jobs is this? So, in essence, he has some glimmer of truth because he never said anything in detail. He said he created 32,000 jobs. Now, we are the wide public looking around, so where these jobs are, because we don't feel we just suffering unless we're still unemployed. When you look at Grand Bahama and you come back to Nassau, you should have got people unemployed. But I can guarantee you that a lot of these were temporary jobs that they put together and they put some numbers up, Mr. McKinney. Thank you.
I appreciate your call. One of the things on that particular course we talked today is when the last statistical look was made with the persons in the category of 18 to 25 in the job market, there was a rise of unemployment of about 37%. Now that's a lot of people. Now let's look at that again. 18 to 25 workforce. People at the age where they have all their strength to do things. 37% of them were unemployed. Now that's not my numbers. These are the department's numbers, statistics, and these numbers were used in the parliament as far as what the concerns were. And so the urgency of trying to create jobs became very urgent because you can't be going to election with the young people who are looking to be the ones to vote for you, and they are the highest in the area of unemployment. So somebody has to be more responsible and say, look, in the category of 18 to 25, we have created so many jobs. This is what we're doing. These are permanent jobs. These are temporary. And succinctly tell the public what it is, because this is going to be a whole bit of mix up over the next few weeks. And that's not going to do the PLP any good if they don't succinctly say what it is that they have done and sober-mindedly approach it, because I'm sure they've done some things as far as job creation is concerned, but how do you really measure of what it is that they've done. And I suppose that's why people are going on about it today. Hardcopy, how are you? Hardcopy, how are you? Are you there? Okay, don't hear anybody there. So, gentlemen, ladies, here's the score now. TPM is back, third place. They've not lost any ground. They have a wonderful mandate. They got a beautiful mission statement. They are focused on the things of our forefathers, who will in fact see to it that we are the heirs and successors of these hierarchical keys known as the sunny Bahamas, and that we will prosper in our land where there's all this natural wealth that we have. This is all well and good, and that's come out, that's been amplified. But do we have, when I say we have to talk collectively as a people in Bahamas, do we have what it takes right now to switch the paradigm, to bring the focus to where it's supposed to be, to bring the game home? Because people want to see change, and they want to see change now. Do we have what it takes? Is there enough time? How do you deal with this? How do you deal with now going back and brushing off everything and getting everything back in the kind of mood that you wanted to be in and be able to deliver? How do you stand and deliver now on this whole matter?
I think before Charmaine comes in, that we are going back to the old landmark. We're going to start where, I remember the song, I think it was by Shirley Caesar, say, take me back to the place where I first loved or first began, whatever it is, but take me back. And that's where we're going to go. We're going to start back. We're going to say, we started this movement with God in this direction. We're back there now. We're going to ask him for the leaning and the direction so that we can capture the hearts and minds of the people. We believe this, that we are only the vehicle, that the people will only be attracted to us if we are obedient to our true core, and that is the full involvement of the people, the full participation of the people. And we have a classic example of how we involve ourselves. We see what's going on at the PRP's convention right now. We saw it in the African convention as well, how they select their leaders. We want to be totally different from that. We say that the people's movement at the moment has no leader. We have a group of people, a group of Bahamians who are concerned enough to direct it to a convention so that we can select the leader, and the leader selected in a very public and open and transparent way.
That's right.
That's the only way we'll do it. And also to let them know that we rely on the same things that they all rely on, that the people in this movement are them, we are from them, we are just as they are, and we will have their best interests at heart. And we go forward with it just like how we did it in the referendum. That's how we get around the time. The time's not going to be an issue for us. We're not focused on that. We believe that as long as we do what we were supposed to do in terms of being obedient to what we believe this mission is, we're going to be all right. It's not for us to concern ourselves about when the next election is going to be called, or if it's going to be called at all. It's for us to ready our own self. And then at that time, we will see what the Lord says.
And as part of that preparation, Steve, I don't think the public had a great appreciation for the work that was done before the merger. I mean, we have one of the youngest, brightest campaign managers in the country, who not only offers service, but already, even before the merger, had in place the kind of structure, had in place the kind of campaign team. You talk about, for an example, the founding fathers. This movement has that kind of appreciation for the work of the founding fathers, but also the need to go forward. So we're going to talk about how do we consider memorializing our fathers and giving them the kind of stature that they deserve. We're going to talk about how we identify with what the true culture is of the Bahamas in terms of laying out the platform for that. We're going to talk about what it is to create a foundation of peace and prosperity. All of these things are already in the work. Part of Tuesday's meeting, we'll talk a little bit about that hopefully before the show. Part of Tuesday's meeting, like you said, is to recommit ourselves to that process, to involve more people in the process. Some persons were out last night. They're equally excited and ready to go and be a part of this. The text that you read earlier on the gentleman who called. So when you have this, and this is one of the things, Steve, about what this kind of dispensation leadership means, that you don't have to carry the burden by yourself. That people are more than willing to participate and to be a part of the process, and they're bringing their skills and their talents and their gifts to be a part of the process.
That's exactly what should happen.
That-
Inclusion.
Inclusion.
And people feel to be a part of something
And
that they're
that's-
helping to shape.
That's the only way this is going to be
And,
done. That's why it has to be the people.
Yeah.
Forward, upward, onward together. And so we're appealing to independents who have like minds. We're appealing to other people that, because even the context of gatekeepers was not just limited to us. It was Bahamians rising up from every walk of life who said, we want a stake in the direction of the country.
And we are keepers of the gate.
And we are keepers of the gate.
One of the avenues that we see now is giving our nation so much trouble is our social arena. And that's one of the main focuses that I'm going to be focused in. And the reason for that is what we see now is this total breakdown in our society. I mean, from almost like top to bottom. We are afraid to come outside of our homes. One of the main reasons I think we have seen such decay definitely is an economic problem. But at the heart of it is a breakdown in our family structure. And what we as a TPM is not waiting until after the election to say what we will do afterwards. We are people who are working in these spheres right now. And you know, one of the most dangerous things is I served at Civil Society Bahamas for about 6 years under the presidency of Mr. Anthony Hamilton. And you know what one of the biggest problems is? Civil society has been so grossly neglected by the government in terms of making sure that it has what it needs.
Yeah.
And not just the big NGOs or CSOs that are out there, but the small ones who are on the ground in these rural, hard-hit areas who never get support or funding or rarely get the real support they need. And these people, I've seen people break down vehicles, taking people's kids, trying to do what they can. And these people are the ones who need to be strengthened because they're the real ones on the ground. I mean, you talk about a turnaround. We making this look like turning this nation around is difficult. From what I've seen, it's easy. But unless a government has the political will to really put monies where it needs to go, and not just in the hands of friends, like you said, friends, family, and lovers. I really like that quote, but unless they really
That's not
honestly,
mine, that's Dr. Donaldson's.
okay, but we give him his credit for it. But unless we really start to put the resources behind these people, they are there, they are doing what they can, but even them of themselves, and as much as we like people to volunteer, you have to take care of these people. This nation can be turned around in an instant if we have the political will to put the resources where they need to go in a social capacity. And so we're not waiting until after the election to do this. We already have people working, and we have already called them together to help show them how we will continue to strengthen them in their endeavors.
Yeah, let's take a telephone call here. Hardcopy, how are you?
Good afternoon, Steve. How you doing?
Peace and love. I'm in good shape. Thank you.
Okay, great. This is Prince Smith.
Prince, how you doing?
Hey, Prince.
Hey, listen, Steve. The PLC claim that they created 32,000 jobs. I have a difficulty with accepting that number.
Most people have a difficulty with it. It seems like they just threw a number out there and it says it sticks and it's getting traction within their grouping.
Right.
I don't know if it's getting traction nationwide.
Well, I don't think it's getting any traction because it seems very hollow. Let me give you an example. Phase one Atlanta created about 5,000 jobs, right? And the impact of those 5,000 jobs was ricocheted all throughout the economy.
Yes.
Now, to create 32,000 jobs means that they created the equivalent of 6.5 phase one Atlantis.
Yes. That's correct.
That certainly didn't happen.
Well, there you go. You've just figured it out.
I mean, I'm trying to put that in perspective so that people can get an appreciation for what 32,000 jobs look like. Because it's easy to say you created 32,000 jobs.
Yes.
But you got to quantify that, and there has to be some kind of a multiplier effect in the economy that actually demonstrates that kind of fiscal impact on a country.
Yes.
And I'm saying there's no way that has happened.
Well, I mean,
Not even the equivalent of one phase one Atlantis was created, which would only be 5,000 jobs.
Yeah. Well, you see, there you have it. I mean, you've brought scholarship to it as far as dissecting it and analyzing it. And there are many people out there just like you who are trying to come to terms with it. And all they can come up with is that it's got to be crazy stuff, just crazy talk.
I mean, it's Mickey Mouse. I mean, you might recall about a year and a half ago, they they claim that they created 10,000 jobs.
Yes.
And again,
They had difficulty
1,000 jobs,
explaining that
the
as well.
equivalent of 2 phase 1 Atlantis being built in this country.
Which would ricochet in the economy by so
There'll
many
be a
people doing
tremendous
well.
multiplier effect if that happens.
Yeah, well, listen, friends, I appreciate what you're saying, and you're not wrong. You've opened up everyone's minds listening today as food for thought because, people can now put some things in perspective and ask those pertinent questions. I appreciate your call, my friend.
You're welcome. Thank you, Billy.
All the best. So, here's what somebody said to me here this afternoon. It says, good evening, Mr. McKinney and guests. It's so good to hear from Mr. Paul Moss and Mr. Glenn Rule. I respect these men. They are genuine and honest, and for that, I really respect them. Whatever I can do to assist our movement, he says, please let me know. And so that's somebody who's wanting to be a part of what's going on with this movement.
So we'll see from what the other caller was saying, we have to understand that over 5,000 young people graduate every year.
Yes.
And a good chunk of those are looking for jobs. So you really need to have at least 5,000 to 6,000 jobs out there every year to just keep the economy going, and we're not seeing that. And are we preparing our young people for the job market? That is the other question. So when you tackle a thing like job creation, really the government shouldn't be creating jobs per se. They should be looking for ways to empower the people in the community to provide jobs, and also making sure that our young people are skilled and the skills are diversified to the actual context of our environment. So if we do not train our children to function in our own country. And until we actually look at what we need in this country, what are our resources in this country, and account for those things, we can't guide anything. We're surrounded by water. We're an island nation. We have nothing in our schools that would take our kids into any kind of marine engineering or any kind of fishing. These are things that we need to look at. What is going to benefit us for the context that we are in? We cannot train our children to be anything but Bahamian and to fit into what is going on in our country. We don't train them properly, and then we turn around, we bring other people in to do jobs that we could have just looked at and said, guess what, in 5 years, we're going to need so many capital. We're going to need so many this and that. And you plan accordingly. And a part of the plan we've been working with the TPM looks at development over a long period of time, in which we take these things into consideration. We look at statistics. We put them in the context of where they should be and not superficially, where you can just use them willy-nilly. And we use that material to actually guide us in our preparation for the future. And that takes it to another level. I don't think we're there, and that's where we need to be.
Well, this is the kind of scholarship that's around.
Of course, and earlier the scholarship that we saw was from the one of the first individuals to talk about the abundance of what we have. And she talked about marine biologists. When Ari Cooper stood there that morning, Independence morning, saying, "Look out there!
Yes, sir.
Look at the sea! Look at all that sand!" He said it at the very, very premature end at the time. We were just a nation beginning, but he was saying all that aragonite, see all that white sand. He says, and he said that. That's right. He says, "Look at all the sea." Yeah. The sea has the abundance of so many things. The sea is how we're supposed to be playing and making things happen for us. But we seem to have decided at one point to turn the sea into a pathway to move drugs instead of looking at the sea for what the man spoke about. And she's just saying that now. This is a new generation.
Yes.
Dr. D. Arch is a new generation who's just put some legs and some scholarship onto what Reverend Dr. Ari Cooper said. That he said, look, let me hint you. See that sea? See that side? That's what he was saying.
I met his son the other day through my corner, and he was, of course, giving out some of the CD tapes that he had at the first Independence Ceremony. And as old as he is, the degree to which this man appreciates this moment. And he was telling another very strong PLP neighbor of mine that you really miss what this moment, you miss what Dr. Ari Cooper was saying, you miss what this 50th anniversary, but we are almost square back to what it was he was communicating, and I believe that's one of the reasons she's able to articulate what Dr.
Let me just say it quick that if you read the writings of Sir Randall Fox, you will see that we are exactly where we were at that point in time. If you were to read them, you would think that you're reading
Today.
Today's newspaper.
The same call, the same issues, and
Same
we're there.
sense of urgency.
And that's a problem that we have actually gone back from where we came from.
And sadly, one of the things that troubled me was, I was just thinking about, I said, I was not even born then.
Mhm.
And this is the gravity of the situation. As someone who was an unborn person during that time of that march and all that happening, to realize that 50 years later, we are still in that position, that means that as
We're
good as that
marching in a
was, it didn't accomplish its goals. And that's really one of the reasons that even caused me to come forward. Because I said, we can't wait for another 50 years for another unborn generation to have this same struggle we're having now. We cannot sit back anymore and rest on our laurels and expect for what we've been getting. And I believe we're fighting a system. We have to take this system down because this system is set to keep us in a certain position that we would never be able to achieve anything.
Keep us walking in
We
circles.
have to take this system down and let them know that we are the heirs and successors of this land.
That's right.
We cannot allow another 50 years to go forward without this deal.
Well said, and that's exactly what is happening. We're walking in circles. It's almost akin to that of coming out of Egypt and walking into the promised land and didn't even know that you were right there walking around in circles. That is what has happened to us as a people, and it's going to continue unless people open their eyes, become educated on the issues that are in fact before us, and not accept the everyday nonsense about that's where the money's gone. You must be accountable.
Yeah.
Now, if you can't be accountable, we're gonna have to put questions to you all the time.
Yes.
You have to be, all this thing with the mortgage thing. Yeah, some things have happened. The government present has been able to forge out a way to get 320 plus people in these homes that have been foreclosed upon to get a 25% discount at the banks. And the banks have done some other things to help to bring it along. But you're talking 4,000 or 5,000 people who have been foreclosed upon. So when you look at the 325, why you say, hey, way to go, it's a start. It is not an effort that's with impact that people can say, I can put my hands around that and say, something, we're moving in the right direction. We've got to do more than what we're doing. And we've got to care more about what we're doing. And that is what the problem has been. But here's something for the men in the room here. This is something that somebody's put out so that I will put it to you and my pursuit of being fair. This is what the person says. Good evening, Steve. This group, TPM, to me sounds so mixed up. First they had John and others in the front line, and they gained some traction. Then John, for whatever reason, jumped ship, and the group faded. Then they picked up Greg Moss, and John Pender. That didn't work. Now what is it? Now what is this that the group is doing again? It's too late in the game for them, Steve, and people are already turned off from them. You say the FNM is unstable. To me, it seems like this group can't even tie the FNM shoes. Is what this person is saying. Now, I put that there deliberately because people want to express themselves, and this is what this person says. So this is a perception. So maybe there's some misconceptions about this perception, and you perhaps ought to clear it up.
But I think one of the things that was true about the People's Movement, Steve, was that this was never just about individuals. This was always about people's involvement, as the case would be. And so in that regard, you're going to see in some people come and go. But the core, and I think this is what we spoke to as it relates to the meeting, the core of who we are, what caused the movement to be launched in the first place, and the extent to which we may make sidestep that we're prepared to come publicly and say we're willing to correct that process and face the people again. That we're not operating from a realm of having been perfect. We acknowledge that as a young emerging group, we're just developing, trying to determine the various arms and other stuff like that. And it is true that we don't have the history of the other political parties, but it's also true. Not that we want it, but it is also true that where we recognize a fault, where we recognize a wrong, we retract and we say, let's recommit ourselves. I mean, you used the word the other day that we may have to cleanse ourselves as the case may be. So I don't see this as mix-up. And the very thing that Paul spoke about earlier is that this group is under no illusion that this have to be by God and God moving and touching the hearts of the people. And that's true because when I go for an example, there's a gentleman down on who sells breakfast, lunch. He wants to know what happened to you guys. There's a Grammy, Mother Pin, if you're listening. She, you know, every other day, Pastor Roll, what is going on? I went to a wedding about 2 Saturdays ago. There are pastors and other people, guys, what it is that you're doing. So there are people, in spite of our shortcoming, who is waiting. And even you heard the calls earlier that people are saying, hey, I'm glad you guys are back.
But
up
it's
and we are-"
growing pains.
Yeah.
It's growing pains because if you try to move forward and you try to include as many and you made a
We will
commitment
run
to
into
do
some
some things
things,
for
right.
people, you turn through a dead end. You
Yeah.
recognize it's a dead end. Hey,
Exactly.
back up, that's a dead end.
Yeah, and there's
That's
nothing
a learning
wrong.
curve.
Part of our problem in nation building is that we are too afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
This country is afraid to make mistakes, not recognizing that all the great nations made mistakes, but at least they had an opportunity to make mistakes. What we do is we listen to people who tell us from the outside, and we know where McCullough Corner is as an example, but they tell you no, you have to put it down on West End Avenue or West somewhere. That's the kind of mistakes that we have made. But we as a people, it's all right to make mistakes. And if we got it wrong, there will be false starts. We will get those things wrong, but it is your heart that matters. Once you are moving forward in that direction, that's all you're gonna ask for. And the reality is that we need people like that caller to come on board because this is the people's party. And guess what? When I hear people talk about not having sufficient time, let me remind them, God will change you in the moment, in the
Yes,
twinkling of an eye. It could change. And if you believe a day in politics is a lifetime, imagine a day with God. So we're not concerned about what people look at and how much time they think we have. Because if we look at our own self and believe that we could win this thing based on what we see, we are mistaken. We're not freaked out. We know exactly that when we got the results on June 7th, right here on this show, it was a miracle. And we're expecting one again. Expecting one again. And that's what we stand on. We're expecting a miracle.
And you know what, Steve? 2 things. Last night, we called the people to a meeting to address their questions, to open ourselves up, to hear from them, and to give them the opportunity to say to us whatever they wanted to say, to ask whatever questions they wanted to ask. We didn't run away from the issue. We didn't shy away from it. We were open and upfront. And that's the kind of leadership you get with the TPM. This is what the people's movement is all about. And at the end of the day, what we have seen in our whole nation is this fear of allowing people to say, okay, I have this issue. So the minute you raise a question, it becomes personal. That's not what we're about. We opened ourselves up to people asking the tough questions of us, and we were able to share truthfully with them.
We're approaching that 7 o'clock hour, and because of the time frame, we're going to have to call it a day. But let me just read this here for you. It says, Steve, I am so happy the TPM is back again. I have been campaigning. My company is on lockdown. Whatever that means.
That's great. That means it's all good. It's all good.
And so that's some of what people are saying. There's a whole lot, but because of time now, we're going to have to. I'm going to try to post some of these so that people can appreciate what is happening. But go ahead.
On Facebook, we would just want the public, if you wanted more information on what's happening with the People's Movement, we invite you to check out our Facebook page. It's a new Facebook page. it's the TPM 242 on Facebook, and we also have our website is back up and able to sign up and just really stay in touch with what's happening with the People's Movement. You can check us out at thepeoplesmovement.net. That's thepeoplesmovement.net, and definitely on Facebook, TPM 242. Check us out on Facebook. We are ready to go, Steve. We are in no ways tired, and we're excited about what we're able to do. And you know one thing? If the Bahamian people are satisfied with what we've been getting over 20, 30, whatever years, they can carry on, If that's what if we have had such a good time with how we've been governed, then carry on. And if you realize we've been in more trouble, even in the last 5 years than we've ever experienced, then hey, here we go, TPM.
Yeah. Give it a try. I hear you.
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, Steve, for us to come on the radio. But I also want to remind your listeners that we're having an event next Tuesday at the BCOU Hall.
Yeah, BCOU Hall.
Yeah, we invite everyone. We're going to call people back because this is where it started.
This is the gathering.
The gathering, yes.
The gathering will take place.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear certain words like the gathering, that's the People's Movement.
Yeah.
And so the gathering will perhaps take place on Tuesday. This
Tuesday.
coming Tuesday.
It's coming Tuesday. And we certainly want to thank all those persons for your prayers, your support, even your patience, you know, and we look forward to tremendous support.
Okay, so here's the thing. You got this now. You got this?
Yeah,
You got this.
yeah,
You sure now?
yeah, we got this.
All right. I'm listening.
We got this.
I'm gonna keep my ears close to the radio.
And we don't get it, you know, we get a check from Big Brother.
Yeah, I will spike you. And I will bring my hand down hard. And I do that because I know it's supposed to go to a particular level.
Yeah.
And when I see it's not going to a particular level, then I'll have my say, and I'll say it like I said it when I saw the thing with the UPM.
Yeah.
What is this? What are you doing? And if you don't stop from doing what you are doing, I shall have to expose what you are doing.
Amen.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Diacha, and Minister Charmaine Adderley, and certainly Paul Moss and Glenn Rowe for being here with us today on this show. And we look forward to seeing many good things happening. If you keep the core part, you keep the focus of the mission statement, what you're doing, you're on the right road.
Yes.
And I believe people will see it the way that it is.
Yes.
I thank you all.
Thank you.
So let's go home, Stephen Jr. Stephen J. Stephen Jr. Squire has been the producer of note this evening here on Hardcopy. We've got much work to do. The work for us today starts now. We have no soup to go home to today. There's no soup today. Wife got the time off. We got to go down to convention.
That's the problem.
And I don't suppose they could have any crab
No
soup now.
soup.
Today's show has been brought to you by Mount Tabor Inspiration, Ministry of Tourism, Casika Awards. Also, Hadji's, your favorite everything store. Majority Rule, Commonwealth Bank, Rocky Farms Nursery, the People's Empowerment Convention, the Vanilla Spices and Manufacturing. Also, Cool Tech, Bahamian Brewery, Clean Insurance, Super Wash, Bank of the Bahamas, Super Value, The Show, Bistro on Nassau Street, Advantage Insurance and Brokers, Executive Printers on Jerome Avenue, The People's Movement, TPM, and the McKinney Media Group for the best results in advertisement. Tomorrow is Thursday. That's going to be one interesting day because that will be the day that the PLP will have their leadership race. We will perhaps turn our focus and attention on that. And that is what it may be all about tomorrow. Maybe coming live from down there. Just around 5 o'clock. I'm not sure. I'll have to see. And if the producers say we can do it, we will. If we can't, we'll be here and we'll talk about what's going on and you'll get a chance to express yourself. That's our show for tonight. Tomorrow, then, we hope to see you, God willing. Good night to Hardcopy. God willing, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.